Good alternative.
There we
That
go.
works.
Ah, perfect. There we go.
Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. It's October 6th, 2018 in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have a bunch of friends here gathered. We're going to talk about health. And I'll talk a little bit about my health journey, and I'll let Melanie talk a little bit about her health journey. This is my picture when I was 4 years ago. I weighed 80 pounds more than I do now. And yeah, you can move that over. And you know, I had a lot of health problems, and I was sort of like a lot of people when they get to 50. Now we have some younger people here, but I was getting to 50 and I was really falling apart. I was having heart disease issues. I was having diabetes issues. I was having funny lumps and pains in strange places of my body. And arthritis, psoriasis. Yeah, severe allergies. I always had to have a handkerchief with me. And I was always blowing my nose and snorting, and you remember this growing up, right? And that's all gone. And of course the weight, you know, 80 pounds is a lot. You know, you try carrying two 40-pound bags of feed or something, and walking around with that. And you know, I was free to eat whatever I wanted, but the freedom, I wasn't feeling the freedom when I just get up to move, or even when I was sitting down. Everything would hurt. My back would hurt, my legs would hurt, and then I had a lot of back pain that sort of went along with the weight. And then blood pressure, I had high blood pressure, and they were going to put me on medication for that. And I had, with the allergies, I had blocked ear canals, and I had someone who was asking advice on Facebook about my ears would itch all the time, and so it would really affect my hearing. And they would just always be itching, and I was always doing this, you know, digging in my ears, trying to, you know, just get relief from itching. And I think that went with the allergies. When the allergies went away, that went away too. I had neuropathy, which is tingling in your hands. You know, you guys, these are all the wonderful things you have to look forward to when you get older. And, well, maybe not. That's why you're here. But I get tingling in my hands and my feet, and that's just blood supply, sort of diabetes sort of issues. And I would snore a lot at night, ask Melanie. I would always be snoring because I think I was just so fat right around here that, you know, the air couldn't get through. My eyesight got a little better after I changed my eating. I always had a swelling down here pretty frequently. I had a swollen thyroid. And so I know you didn't come here to hear all about my ailments and my problems, but the good news is that just about all of this spontaneously healed. And you're feeling your thyroid. Yeah. We're all like going, oh, I think I have a lump here. But I had like a pain here. I thought I might have had a tumor. It was just a funny pain here, and then in other places. And I get these skin tags and these warts a lot. And just, you know, funny bumps and growths. And, you know, it's just things, you know, this isn't good. You see it coming up. And so what happened was, you know, I just kept getting these, you know, I'd go to the doctor and he'd say, well, you got to do this and you got to do this and this is what's happening and this is what you have to look forward to and all this. And so I finally said, well, I'm a smart guy, I said to myself. Not that I'm that smart, but so I'm going to read some books. So Melanie was of course like waiting for me to wake up because she had had a healing journey. And so I started reading this book, Preventing and Reversing Heart Disease, because a third of the American population will die of heart disease, and in my family it happens very young. And then this book here, and so that book just talked about, you know, a whole food plant-based diet, and you can reverse heart disease. And then this book is the China Study, and it talked about the link between animal protein like milk, cheese, meat, fish, any kind of animal protein. The link, if you have more than 5% of it in your diet, the risk of cancer just skyrockets. So basically, you can have a serving of animal protein once, maybe twice a week, and you're fine. But if you get into heavy amounts of animal protein, you know, there's all these things that happen. And this guy is really amazing. And then that was a really amazing book, and that really rocked the medical community. But no one paid attention. You know, these books came out and they were just incredible works. And, you know, this guy basically cured heart disease. Hell, he prevents it, which is the same as cure. But everyone's focused on the cure. They're looking for Superman and Spider-Man and someone to come and save the day. You know, by means of a cure, but there is, prevention is a cure, in my opinion, and so, but there's no glory or glamour for prevention. But he prevented heart disease, and this guy basically cured, in my opinion, cured cancer because he showed us how to prevent most of the cancers. And these guys are all over YouTube. The stuff's all up all everywhere, and no one really notices, and no one really cares. But you can care, and I care, and I don't want to suffer the fate of so many of my friends and family. And then the T. Colin Campbell book, China Study, is really tough. It's a tough read. It's very scientific. I slogged through it, and you might, but he came out with another book called Whole later on that really is an amazing book. And so so that was part of my transition, was reading these books. Oh, then The End of Diabetes. This is a guy that really helped me, Joel Fuhrman. He does the nutritarian diet, and he has a lot of books and a lot of YouTube videos. And you can watch a YouTube video of him in about 15 minutes. You'll totally get what he says with the nutritarian diet. And basically, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but he's that's sort of the operating manual that I use, my mode of operation. And I'll talk about him as I get into it. But I want to let Melanie share a little bit about her health journey, and if you want to. Yeah.
So I think it was like about 19 years ago, I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and I was going back and forth to the doctor a lot, and just very frustrated because they would say, well, there's nothing wrong with you, and I'm like, well, there is. Because when I lived in London, I used to be able to cycle 30 miles a day, and now I can barely walk halfway down the street. So anyway, they eventually said, oh, well, you've got chronic fatigue syndrome, and there's nothing more we can do. So I went home, and I was just really depressed, and just no energy. And then a friend of mine said, look, why didn't you contact this lady in Franklin? Her name's Ginny Harper. She's helped this other lady, actually her mother-in-law, and had tremendous results, so why don't you contact her? So I was like, oh, okay, well, what's her number? And I gave her a call, and then literally within 6 weeks of her telling me what to do, my energy came back, and I just haven't looked back since. And I haven't even had, I used to get colds and the flu every season, every couple of, in fact, once a month I would have a very, very severe sore throat that I'd have the strongest lozenges on the market. I mean, every day of the year I'd have throat lozenges in my bag because my throat hurt so much. And then once a month I would go through 3 packets, and on the other weeks of the month I would just go through 1 packet. But I mean, I could have had shares in a throat lozenge company because I went through them so much, and it was the strongest one, the ones that completely anesthetize your throat but probably don't really do a whole lot other than that. And so I mean, it was just amazing. I just changed my nutrition, and my health came back, and I haven't looked back since, and have bounding energy, and I'm almost 60 years old, and so it's good.
Very beautiful too. And so so what happened was I started changing the way I ate, and I immediately lost a lot of weight. And what I realized is your probability of getting cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and being obese, all these things sort of go together. So what I was doing was I was at risk of a heart disease, I was at high risk of cancer, I was already obese, and all these diseases sort of come together. They're like a gang of really bad friends that sort of live inside your body. And so when I start to change, I think all my incidents and sort of probability of getting these problems sort of all went down together, and we don't really think of that. We think of, well, hey, our friend got cancer, but he's maybe 50 years old, but the heart disease is right in there with it, and so we just sort of go through this sort of decrepit process of sort of a downward spiral where we can be taken out by any sort of disease. And so what I'm going to share with you, what I did, I think it'll really be helpful. And what we're going to do is just go through, I'm going to, take you through the fridge and, some of the different foods that I eat. And, we all make baby steps. So what happened with me is I lost about 85 pounds. My doctor was amazed. He's like looking at my chart, and he's like, Sam, over there. He's like looking at me, and he's like, you lost 50 pounds. And I said, yeah. And he goes, how'd you do it? And I said, well, diet and exercise. And he goes, oh, you should write a book. And you know, he wasn't at all interested in how I did it or what I did, or any of these books. You know, he just didn't care. You know, he went to you know, he's a really, you know, high-end doctor, went to Vanderbilt, really, you know, prestigious guy.
But he almost threw you out on the previous visit.
Yeah, he almost threw me out because I wouldn't take the cholesterol medicine, because it does things with your brain. It makes you forget, you know. Like I wouldn't forget who my son is, for example. I would forget who he is. What's your name? You know, but you know, my cholesterol would be low, and so so what happened was he said, well, you should write a book, and I was like, yeah, that was the last time I saw him. And, you know, I still don't get much joy in the medical community. I don't find a lot of truth-seeking there, honestly. But there are a lot of great doctors and nurses out there that are seeking the truth and are really starting to turn people onto this, because, you know, the money might be good treating all these diseases, but hey, let's face it, you know, we can't take it with us when we go, and we have to look in the mirror every morning. We have a conscience that we live with all the time. So I think but there are a lot of doctors out there that are trying to do what's right, and they're honestly tired of telling people, you know, well, stop eating that. You know, it's a pizza and the 6 beers you have, you know, 4 times a week. You know, and you know, so you got to give them some credit too, because you know they're blue in the face just telling people to change their ways. So what I'll talk about is, you know, what now is sort of how I. What happened was I lost that 50 pounds, and but I was exercising all the time. So it was like the treadmill was like, you know, in the running, you know, I'd run. So I'd run and burn, like, you know, run a few miles really fast. I'd time it. And so I was on this sort of proverbial treadmill where I'd have to run and work out a lot and just keep the weight, to keep that 50 pounds off. And I was sort of on this, it was taking a lot of time and a lot of energy. And then I was playing soccer. I was playing soccer like 4 times a week and just burning massive amounts of calories. And this college student came along and clobbered my leg. And so I couldn't play soccer anymore, and it hurt to run, so I had to stop that. And then I was sort of like, wow, now it's all my progress is going to go away, I was thinking, because I can't run. Because that's how I was burning massive amounts of calories. Because I was on this really good plant-based vegan diet, but I was eating a lot of calories, and I didn't really know why or how. And the weight would just sort of come back on. And so I was, you know, I was sort of stuck there, and I had to up my game. And so what I'm going to show you is sort of how I did that. And it was really with Joel Fuhrman, Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who's, I think he's up in New Jersey. He was a figure skater in the Olympics, and but really a good speaker, very clear, and you know, I understood his videos very quickly, and that was really a lucky day for me when I came upon that. Well, you know, I was praying too. I mean, I was just, you know, asking God to show me. I don't want to be a bad example. I don't want to be this fat blob that sort of walks around and, you know, hey, let me inspire you. And, you know, I wanted to be, you know, someone that can help people and really have a victory. So I was really looking hard. I mean, I had been for years, because I had been fat for 40 years. And I was really looking hard, praying hard, and really, you know, just asking God to show me, you know, there's got to be a way out here. And so what I came across, when I came across Joel Fuhrman, was the nutritarian diet. And so there's just a few basic tenets, I'll tell it real quick, is you don't eat until you're hungry. And the way you know you're hungry is you'll eat anything. So, like, if I'm craving pizza, I'm not hungry. You know, if I'm craving ice cream, then I'm not hungry. So what you do is you start he has a list, he prints this list. And it's called the Andy List, and you're welcome to take one of these, and I put it on the fridge. And so every basic food group is sort of scored. And so you got kale at the top, and that's 1,000. It's the most healthiest food on the planet. And I know it doesn't taste great, but when I'm hungry, like, say if I haven't eaten all day and it's like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, so yeah, you take those home, put them on your fridge, or you don't have to. You can print it out in color if you want. I have a colored one on my fridge, but if you get hungry, like when I'm hungry, like if I go to the store and buy like a 99-cent or $2 thing of organic kale, I'll eat the whole thing because I'm hungry. And so the idea behind the nutritarian diet is my body was physiologically hungry because I wasn't getting the nutrition it needed. Therefore, I was always on the lookout for food. I was always going to the fridge. I'd go to a party, and I was always, you know, first one in at all the snacks, or if dinner would be late, I'd be looking under the lids, with Melanie in the kitchen, saying, oh yeah, and sneaking food when she'd go into the other room, because even if dinner was on time, I was always on the lookout, prowling for food like a dog. But when I would satisfy the physiological needs of my body by eating from the top of this list when I was hungry, I would be satisfied. Now, if I went and ate the main course and then went back to the kale, it's like, I'd be like, hey, get this out of here. This is disgusting. I don't want to eat this kale. Because, I just had all these yummy, yummy main courses over here. And so the idea is when I'm hungry, I eat from the top of the list. And these are less palatable foods. I mean, let's face it, ice cream tastes very palatable. Or, some of these foods are, barbecue or steak, or, these foods are extremely, macaroni and cheese, extremely palatable foods. But the stuff at the top of this list, the collard greens, the kale, the mustard greens, the Swiss chard, the spinach, the arugula, these dark green leafy vegetables are not nearly as palatable. So the idea is to eat them first. And, think about it, when you sit down to a meal, they serve the salad, the main course, and the dessert. And there's a reason for that. It's because what we're doing in our body is when you eat that food, it hits the hydrochloric acid. That does some of the work. But what really does the heavy lifting of getting the nutrients in your body is the microbes. So you're really growing like a compost pile, like a bunch of microbes. So those greens go down there, and they're little houses, and they're food. The microbes eat the cellulose, and they have their houses on the surface area of those, that chewed up kale and lettuce or whatever it is you ate. That's like a dark green leafy vegetable. And so what happens is they get going and they get populated. So you're hungry, you eat these greens, and all these microbes have houses and they have food. They eat their houses. They eat the cellulose. And so then you eat the main course, and then they start chowing and devouring that. A lot of times you feel warm when you start to, like a compost pile outside. And then you put the dessert on there, and all that sugar just feeds all those microbes, and it just, and you really get a rush of the microbes going. And it's just like a compost pile. And that's how you feed plants. And you think about it, the soil and the digestive tract are almost exactly the same. And as I was studying soil science and studying what's called microbiome, I started to notice all these similarities. And then someone helped me understand that it's because God made man from the dust of the earth. That's why the processes in our gut are so much like the processes in the soil, as God made man from the dust of the earth. So we are dust. And so we act like the soil. And so all the microbes in the soil are actually, most of them are ingestible and beneficial. So, I don't sterilize everything anymore. And I don't cook. I don't eat a lot of cooked foods. And when you buy food at an organic farm or at a supermarket, they're usually sterilized. They're spraying chlorinated water on it, and they're dipping it in hydrochloric acid. Hey, Scott.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Late.
Yeah, grab a seat. We're filming here, so we just got the camera going, and it's sterilized, and everyone's into sterility, And if you're cooking, if you're cooking the flesh of animals, or you're around, some sort of sewerage, well, we need to. Those are microbes we don't want to have. The microbes around flesh, dead flesh or meat, we call it, or it could be it could be not meat. It could be like roadkill. And then microbes around excrement, or sewage. These are bad microbes, but the other microbes are good. And they help populate the microbiome and get the digestion going. And we're always sterilizing everything. So cooking food is one really good way of sterilizing things, and that'll kill the microbiome. That's why it's good to eat a raw salad before you have your main course if you're eating cooked food, is because that'll populate the microbiome and get it going. And the fasting, if you eat when you're hungry, what happens is that you get a die-off of the microbiome, and then you replenish it with the greens, and they've got the microbes on it. And so that's how you get the nutrition into your body. And there are other things, like eating when you're calm. Like if someone's just made you really mad, if you have a teenager, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. Or you have, a child and they're just winding you up, and that happens. Or you've got, someone who just bothers you all the time. or someone at work and you're anxious and you're angry, it's not a good time to eat. Because, or if you're in a hurry, it's not a good time to eat. And, I know it takes time, but, life is full of time, but there is some time involved. And another thing that's really important that we sort of overlook is chewing. So when you chew kale, like for instance, you're hungry and you chew kale, you notice a lot of salt's coming out of the greens, and you start to taste that. And but if you eat a lot of, if you just have like French fries, you're not going to really, you're not even going to be able to get the kale down. But when you chew it real well, you notice a lot of salt's coming out, and the chewing is really important. And it's very, and you have to be calm to do that. So there's just sort of some basic things about eating that, and so what I do is I move from the greens, and then I'll move to some other foods, and I'll take you around the kitchen and show you what I eat. And that's not what you eat, but you can make improvements in increments. I mean, might take one idea from here and make it your own, and move on, and then then watch the video or get on YouTube and just keep finding ideas. And so I'll go to the fridge and just pull some. So we can sit here and I'll wheel some things out and show you sort of how I do it. So not all greens. I have a garden, but you don't need to have a garden to be healthy. But when you have a lot of energy, gardening is a great way to use it. So bear that in mind too. You might say, "Well, I don't have time for a garden." Well, maybe if you have twice the energy, maybe you'd be like, bouncing off the walls and have to have a garden just to keep out of your spouse's hair and stuff bothering your family. So I go out to the garden. So what I do is I start out with greens, so there's two kinds of greens. I sort of classify them in two kinds. One is the bitter greens. And so these are carrot tops that came from the garden. These are dandelion, which is really a great plant. It's a great thing to eat if it's not been sprayed with weed killer. But dandelion can endure the weed killer. It's amazing stuff. Some kale, and just bitter greens. It's what I call bitter greens. They're not really bitter. Radish leaves, like the leaves of the radish. So I have a lot of like my radishes. They look all horrible, but I eat the greens on the top, so it doesn't really matter. When you have a garden, you have a lot more latitude. And then there are a lot of wild plants that are really great to eat, and I've learned what those are, and I'll put them in here. And some are bitter, and some are sweet. But I'll have the bitter greens first when I'm hungry. And it'll take me about 15-20 minutes to eat this. I'll chew it really well. Sometimes I'll be reading. Sometimes I'll be at the computer. It'll actually taste good. It'll go down pretty good. And then I'll get to a point where I don't want any more of that. I'll start to feel it. But that's most of my nutrition is right here. For the day, and that's like 50 calories. It's not even probably 30 calories. So you can see how you're winning. So you got huge nutrient spike, and you got no calories, and you can sort of see. And then I'll go for the more palatable. These are really yummy lettuces and beet greens and all sorts of sprouts. And so I'll do that. I'll have these. I'll eat this whole thing, and I won't eat till usually around 2 or 3 o'clock, depending on what my schedule is. And again, it'll take a long time to eat this. And I'll wheel out some more stuff. You want to get the fridge on? And show you where I go from there. And so the idea is to really get the nutrients going. And so Melanie every day, not every day, but once a week, she'll put a bunch of vegetables through the food processor. So I go to Kroger's, I get organic fennel, carrots, celery, kale. I put a little organic sweet corn here, the frozen kind. Just anything that looks good in the produce department by way of organic produce. And she'll run it through the food processor, and I'll put it in these mason jars, and I'll have this. And so I'll probably have that next. And then I'll have sprouts. Sprouts are just off the charts as far as nutrition, and so these are black lentils, so they have I have a screen lid here, and I have some extra lids, plastic ones I don't use anymore. If anyone wants to take them home, you can take a set home. because I went to the metal ones after the plastic ones because the water goes in a lot easier when so what you have to do is I'll fill it about that much with lentils, and any organic lentil seems to work. Lentils are great, but there's like 59 things you can sprout, and I have a box of sprouts. Well, all the seeds that I use, I'll show you those. I'll fill it up maybe about a cup, and then I'll fill it halfway with the water and let it sit overnight. And then in the morning I'll rinse it, and then I'll lay it on its side, and I like to tip it back. And then in about 2 days I get these little tails on them, and then I put them in the fridge. And they're really good eating. So this is like what you would use for maybe potatoes or rice. This is a raw, high nutrient and loaded with protein. I mean, protein off the charts in the form of amino acids. And just a really amazing, but it's very bland. So I put things on it like I'll put nutritional yeast. I'll grind up some dulse. I'll grind up flaxseed in my little coffee grinder and put it on there. But a lot of times I just eat it raw because, you know what, I'm hungry. It's amazing how good food tastes when you're hungry. It really is. And so, but I'm not going out to all these restaurants and eating the food that I used to eat, these really palatable foods. But I'm having just as much pleasure because I'm hungry when I eat, and it makes a big and I get fat. I can stop eating. So this is red clover, and this is sort of like a green, and it just sort of it just doubles. And so what happens is all the carbon in the air goes into the seed, and it just starts multiplying in size. So it's extremely economical. Like a bag of lentils is like $2, organic lentils, and it makes like 20 servings of this, and it gets bigger as it. But I like to eat the beans. I like to eat them when they just have tails. But the greens, like the broccoli greens and the red clover, extremely effective. They'll actually put on weight so like it'll fill up. I'll eat it halfway down. It'll fill up again. I go through this 2 or 3 times. So I'm actually creating food out of thin air because it sucks in the nitrogen and the carbon from the air and puts on mass, if that makes sense. And then from there, I'll just go, I'll sort of get full on the salads and the sprouts and the what I call slaw. I call that slaw. I don't know. This is just sort of a time saver because the chewing takes so long. And it saves time. Like Melanie will make it at the beginning of the week, and I'll have it in the food in the fridge all week. And then I'll move to more of a fruit thing, or fruits and nuts, fruits and dates. We get these dates. We get dried figs. I'll show you some of these foods. And this is really a strategic food for people that can't get rid of sweets. And I'll walk the camera here for a second. Yeah. So a lot of people really struggle with candy and cakes at night. And this was a big problem for me. I'd get up and go to the freezer 5 times until the ice cream was gone, and that was pretty regular pattern for me. Just the craving. So you can take these. You can try one of those. These are dates, and you get really good. You can take one and you can eat one if you're not in the mood for it. It's fine. You can pass it around. But if you're instead of chocolate or instead of like a Snickers bar, this is just an all natural. It's high in fiber. But at the end, of my meal, I'll reward myself with a couple of dates, or these are mulberries, and you can try those and pass those around. And so they're really sweet. And so if you have a sweet tooth, this is how you sort of deal with that. Is they're loaded with sugar. I mean, they taste absolutely really sweet, and they're loaded with fiber. So it's not going to have. It's going to be different than eating like a regular a candy bar, but you're not getting high fructose corn syrup. The kids will eat them. Feeding kids is tough too. They're so used to getting all these candies, but they get hungry enough and they'll eat dates and they'll eat mulberries and then nuts. These are just organic apricot. They're like almonds, and so there's all sorts of dessert kind of things that I eat. Young Thai coconuts is a big one, and fruits. I've gotten really good at sourcing fruit, and the tough part about fruit is we only know apples, oranges, and bananas pretty much, but there's so many different kinds of fruits, and if there's an Asian market in your area, learn all the different fruits and then learn how to ripen them. That's the tough part. is ripening them and getting them when they're ripe. Even when they're not ripe, you're going to feel awful, and you're going to like, oh, this is horrible. Give me my candy bar. And you're going to be looking for that chocolate stash you hid under the bed a year ago. And so the idea is to learn how to ripen the fruit. And then the fruits come in and out, and there's frozen fruits which aren't as good in the winter. It's always changing out, and things are in season at different times. And so, so that's pretty much it. Would you add anything to that, Melanie? And we'll open up for any questions. And I have some other handouts here. These are Bible verses on health. If anyone's into that, you can take one of those. But we'll open up for any questions if anyone has any.
How come you don't juice all your greens? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, how come I don't juice all my greens? I have 3 really nice juicers. We've just sort of accumulated juicers, and I was doing that for a while, and that's good. That's good for getting nutrients in your body quickly. But what I found is that the microbiology in my gut, it needs the cellulose to set up. It's kind of like in a petri dish, you have to have a substrate to put the whatever it is you're trying to grow, and so the cellulose is a substrate for the microbiome. And it's little houses and food for the microbiology in your gut. And so after I sort of got myself, invigorated with the nutrients, I didn't really need the juice. And the juicing's a lot of work, but it's quick, and it is a way to get nutrients in your body really quickly. And certain times, if you're running a lot or doing something like that. A lot of my family members really like to juice, and will juice. And when the abundance is coming in the garden, I feel like it shouldn't go to waste. And sometimes we get humongous amounts of greens, really sweet, nice greens, and I'll juice those. But it's more of a treat. But it's a really good question. I did start out juicing a lot, and then found out that I didn't really need to as much.
Well,